Welcome back to The Color Between the Lines. In this edition,
Inevitably, you ask them, okay, how old would you be if you could decide? You hear everything from 16, 25. One kid, 99. He said 99. I said, why do you want to be 99?
we speak with Clothilde Ewing, the author of a delightful picture book that's empowering. It's called Stella and Roger Can't Wait to Grow Up. In this newest tale, Stella and Roger dream about what life would be like when they're all grown up. And along the way, they find out some really surprising wisdom. I'm Esther Dillard, chatting with writers, authors, and experts who offer an added perspective for listeners. This is The Color Between the Lines. On this edition of The Color Between the Lines, we're speaking with a children's author who has successfully published a series of 3 children's books. The latest, Stella and Roger Can't Wait to Grow Up, published by Simon & Schuster's Black author imprint, Deneen Milner Books. Her name is Clothilde Ewing, and she's here not just to talk about her book, but her journey to become a children's author in the first place. Welcome, Clothilde, to the BIN.
Thanks for having me.
We'll talk a little bit more about Stella and Roger and the story and the storyline. Tell us a little bit about it without giving us everything.
Everything. Well, my latest picture book is Stella and Roger Can't Wait to Grow Up. And this is a book about how Stella and Roger want to be older because let's face it, when you're 5, you often want to be 7. When you're 10, you want to be 12. When you're 12, you can't wait to be 16 and drive, and it all goes on. And it probably isn't until you're 25, 30 that you think, all right, let me dial this back a little bit. But that is a universal feeling for a lot of people. And one of the things that I think is really interesting when I was researching this book, I touched base with friends who had kids older than mine. These kids were tweens, teenagers, and they asked them about things that they missed from being younger. And the things that they said would just stop you in their tracks. One little girl said, not even little girl, tween said she missed riding on her dad's shoulders. Another kid independently said she missed drawing sidewalk chalk outside and blowing bubbles. Somebody else said, I missed when I had all your love before a sibling came around. And these are things that you wouldn't have expected a teenager to say. It really was a moment where it made their parents really appreciate how important it is to remind ourselves and remind our kids to live in the moment because you only get that once. You only get it once. Now, fast forward, I've done this reading with a number of elementary school kids, and inevitably, you ask them, okay, how old would you be if you could decide? You hear everything from 16, 25. One kid, 99. He said, 99. I said, why do you want to be 99? He said, well, nobody tells you what to do. You've done everything you want to do. He had a whole host of reasons. Now, never mind, I'm sure the 99-year-old would dial it back if he could. But, this whole book is about just appreciating where you are now because you don't get that time back. All that time that you just wish you were somebody else, wish you were at another age, wish you were somewhere else, wish you were doing something else. Live in the now, live in the now. So, though it's a picture book, I think it's got a universal message for kids and adults alike.
Well, I invited you to The Color Between the Lines because I resonated with your backstory because there are a lot of women who are successful career women but are looking for change. But doing that takes a lot of guts and it also takes a lot of planning. You had both. Can you talk a little bit about your journey about becoming a children's book author and what inspired you to start?
For sure. Well, I think, first of all, hopefully, if people take nothing else from my story, I hope they realize that it's never too late. It is never too late. I grew up loving to read books, but I never thought of myself as somebody who would write a book. However, when I had kids, I felt compelled to do something about it. I've worked in a number of different fields, always communications, but never writing for children. But I had 2 young children, as I mentioned, who are now 10 and 8. When they were much younger, 2 and 4, I came across an article that was titled in the paper, She Wants More Than MLK at Bedtime. And it struck a nerve. It struck a nerve. It really articulated so much of what I had experienced when I tried to find books for my kids. there is diversity out there for sure, but oftentimes that diversity is one or two notes. It's about our history, it's about excellence, both of which are important. And I have a lot of those books. But what this article talked about is that our kids also deserve stories about our wild imaginations and kids being kids. And so I cut out the article, I put it on my vision board, and I eventually tried to start doing something about it. But something that you said is really important because I also decided to send a letter, send an email to my friends and family about what I was trying to do. And that was important because then all those people held me accountable. I said I was going to do this. They then checked in regularly on it, and it kept me on my journey.
I know that it takes a lot of planning and it takes a lot of connections and such as that. It's not easy writing a children's book, and I've heard from so many authors that it's such a challenge they didn't expect. Was it a challenge for you, and how did you, I guess, figure out how to make this a three-time success?
Oh, it definitely was a challenge and it still is a challenge. I think for a couple of different reasons. One, you forget how few words you have to pack a story into. And that is something that is hard in and of itself. I always knew that my main character was going to be Stella, but I tried a number of different stories and different angles before I could figure out what that actual first story was going to be. And I just kept at it. I kept at it. I kept at it. I kept at it.
Tell us a little bit about these two characters, Stella and Roger, and what inspired you to develop them into what they are today and this particular storyline.
Yeah, so Stella is a wildly imaginative 6-year-old girl who has an idea and just goes after it. She goes after it. In the first story, she's a kid who doesn't like to go to sleep. I think that's universal, regardless of race or ethnicity. Kids don't like to go to bed at bedtime. And my kids are exactly the same. So a lot of my stories are inspired by things that we've gone through in our own home. So Stella is somebody who's got agency. She may not know exactly what route she's going to take, but she knows what her goal is. And so I wanted to try and develop a story with the first story, Stella Keeps the Sun Up, about kids who don't like going to bed at bedtime, but in the end realize, okay, I got to do this for X, Y, or Z reason, because I can totally sympathize with other parents out there who go through the bedtime struggles because they are real.
Mm. I know that many people find challenging as an author writing, but some find challenging the marketing and business side of things. What have you found with that side that you have done that kind of helped you, make it a success? Because not everyone that publishes a book is successful, and you have definitely gone over that hump.
Thank you. Yes, the marketing is it is it's always been challenging and it continues to be a challenge if I'm being honest. I had talked to thankfully a number of authors as I was starting my journey and they tried to prepare me. They said, "Okay, the publisher will be there, especially in the beginning, but there's a lot of work you're going to need to do to get it out there." And I will admit that I was surprised at just how hard it would be. I have been really encouraged by the people I hear from, whether it's on social media or when I go do school visits, and people are like, "I saw that book," or "I have that book." Um, and it makes me feel great. It affirms the idea, and yet I still walk away and say, "Oh, if only I could get to that kid too, and if I could get in that bookstore." I love going to bookstores, and inevitably I'll go and check to see if they have the Stella books. And if I work up the courage, I'll go up to the bookseller and give them a card and see if I can send them a copy for consideration. It's hard. It's hard. But I'm really appreciative of the people who have shared the book with their friends and their families and their networks. I feel like the Stella series is a real grassroots effort with the moms, the aunties, the cousins, the friends who are sharing it with the little girls and boys in their lives. And I just hope that that continues.
Is this the last in the series, or do you see another story or adventure that Stella's going to go through?
There will be a fourth. So I signed a two book contract initially, and thankfully, due to the success of Stella Keeps the Sun Up, Deneen came back and signed on for two more books. So the fourth book will be out next year, and that is bittersweet. This has been really a labor of love, a labor of love. But I'm hoping that we can really keep it going, finish strong, or maybe even hopefully open the door for more down the road. But at least there will be at least four.
What do you hope that parents who pick up this book and children who pick up this book will get from it once they open the pages?
Mm, that's a great question. I think first and foremost, I hope that children like my own, beautiful Black children, see themselves in Stella and see themselves in adventures like Stella and realize that we can have a number of different stories and we are a number of different notes. And so I hope they see that. That said, I think that the Stella stories are for kids of all races and ethnicities. I think that it is a beautiful thing that kids that look nothing like mine can see a Stella story and see themselves in her character and see themselves in her journey. I talk a lot about how in the second book, Stella and the Missing Tooth, that when I do readings, it's always interesting to me when I do readings at schools that are incredibly diverse. When there's a picture of the tooth fairy, nobody says that's the black tooth fairy. They say that's the tooth fairy.
That's it.
Period. That's the
Yeah.
tooth fairy. And that means something. That means something both to my kids, but it means something to all kids. And so I hope that they can take away the sameness among us in many ways. And I hope that the kids can also take away the power of imagination and that you can live into this as long as you choose to.
Wow. Well, that's a great message. And thank you, Clothilde Ewing, for joining us on the BIN.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's it for this edition of The Color Between the Lines. If this conversation moved you, inspired you, or made you think a little bit deeper, don't forget to subscribe to The Color Between the Lines on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Esther Dillard.